We are quickly approaching what is every baseball fan and real estate enthusiast's favorite time of year in the GTA, and that is the spring. Opening day of the baseball season just around the corner, spring market just around the corner. Will things pick up? Is this the start of some recovery? These are the questions that I'm getting from buyers and sellers alike right now. I'm going to take a look at the numbers with you today using our favorite platform, the Habistat, to dive into what happened in February of 2026 and what it could mean for the spring market and the rest of the year. If you're new here, I'll introduce myself quickly. I'm Rob Marsiglio. I'm a sales representative with Valerie Real Estate. It's Canada's first ever AI-powered brokerage. We're developing tools for consumers and realtors alike to make the transaction in the real estate industry a bit more of an enjoyable place, easier place to navigate. Check out the company, the link's in the description. If you like this style of video, just a deep dive into the stats, no fluff, no salesy nonsense, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I do something like this every single week, breaking down what is going on in the market to bring you actionable insights to help you with your real estate search, your sales process, or just to quench your thirst for all things GTA real estate. Now, when I sat down to record this video, Treb Market Watch stats were not out quite yet, so we are going to use the Habistat for this video. And we're going to start off with the question that everybody's wondering: what is sales activity picking up? What is going on, Rob? Will we see a recovery in 2026? If we're just looking at sales activity, my guess is going to be no. I think I kind of called my shot and said, there's no way 2026 can be slower than 2025. Look at foolish Rob in that prediction. So our small purple line down here is what has happened in 2026 so far. So it's all property types. We saw just shy of 3,600 sales across the GTA. When I did this search on the MLS, it was right around 3,800 sales. So up slightly from where we were in January, where it was just over 3,000 sales. But you can see, again, we are the slowest February this decade, at least, even slower than 2025, and we had just over 4,000 sales. So regardless if you're using Habistat numbers or the numbers that I looked at from the MLS, we're definitely coming in shy of 2025. Looks like the gap has shrunk a little bit from January's sales figures to where we're at in February right now. But slowest start, we're not seeing any signs of rapid kind of sales activity escalation like we saw in 2023 and 2024 in that early spring market. It's more of a gradual, slow climb, and we'll see where it takes us through the rest of the year. This is what the Freehold picture looks like. So similar story, just shy of 2,300 sales in February of 2026. That is down from 2025, and we saw just shy of 2,500 sales. And if we look at our condos, it's actually a little bit of a different pattern from last year. Last year in 2025, we saw sales pick up just a little bit from January to February. We're still lagging where we were at in 2025, but 2026, you can see just shy of 1,300 condo sales, which is up from just over 1,100 in January. Bottom line on the sales front, it doesn't look like buyers are rushing back into the market at this point in time. And the number that I want you to take away is that we are less than a third of the sales activity this past February than we saw at the peak, like kind of the mania of the market, which was 2021, at least from a sales transactions perspective, where there's just over 11,000 sales in February of 2021. So transactions gives us an insight as to maybe what buyers are thinking of the market. Are they confident to move forward with a purchase? When we're looking at seller indicators, it's new listings. Are people bringing listings back to market early in the year? And you can see here across all property types in the GTA, back in January, there were 10,737 new listings brought to market. Fast forward to February, we actually saw less new listings hit the market in February of 2026 than we saw in January. So a couple of factors to take into account here is obviously the few less days in February relative to January. That could make up that gap. Definitely if we saw an equal amount of days in February as January, we would have seen new listings tick up slightly, but we're not seeing a big rush to market like we've seen in past years. You can see the majority of these lines looking at 2021, 2022, even going back to 2020, really any other year, you see a bit of an uptick in new listings from January to February, if not a drastic one setting up for the spring market. So it doesn't look like sellers are rushing back to market this year as quickly as they have in years past. The majority of that drop off in new listing activity is because of the condos. You can see that Freeholds, again, this purple line, it's a relatively flat bar. It's actually a slight uptick in new listings on the Freehold side. So that's your detached properties, your semis, your townhomes, and I've included link properties in this chart as well. So up to just shy of 6,000 new freehold listings across the GTA, and that is up from around 5,750 in January of this year. So buyers are slow to come back to market and start snapping properties up. Sellers are also slow to bring their listings back to market. And that's translated into something that we talked about in last week's video, but we haven't seen since June of 2023. And active listings across the GTA are actually down year over year for the first time and call it almost 3 years, 2.5 years, but we're just shy of 20,000 active listings right now across the GTA. So it's 19,527. You can see that the previous high for February this decade was 2025, and we saw 20,317 active listings. That gap is about 200 active listings when you look at just freehold properties. So it's around 9,800 active freehold listings right now versus just over 10,000 back in February of 2025. But still a massive gap from every other year. Like the previous high to that was 2024, and we saw just shy of 6,200 active listings at the end of February. Looking at condos in the active inventory story, we're about 500 shy of where we were a year ago at this time. So coming in at just over 8,700 active listings in February of 2026 versus almost 9,250 back in February of 2025. Now, could investors be in a position where markets are doing relatively okay up until at least this past weekend? So maybe they're in a position where they don't feel like they need to sell income properties as desperately as they may have felt they needed to in years past, which is keeping inventory down. The rental market is still pretty weak, but maybe people are testing that as well. It just looks like a bit more of a wait and see. It's still historically very elevated inventory levels relative to what we have seen in the past. Where I called 2025 to be the peak in sales, maybe it was actually just the peak in active listings. We'll see how this kind of trend plays out through the rest of the year. But again, we are seeing sales activity increase at a slower pace, new listings activity increase at a slower pace, and active listings totals increase at a slower pace than we have seen at any point this decade. Where the story continues to get even more interesting is when we look at median sale prices across the Greater Toronto Area, and where do we rank in terms of previous years this decade. And 2026, at least on the freehold side, is slotting in to that little gap that we saw, well, that massive gap because of those price ramps. But the big gap between 2020 and 2021 has started to be filled by 2026 numbers. So the median sale price for a freehold property across the GTA was $1,065,000 this past month. Back in 2020, it was down at $907,000. So still a big gap from the floor for this decade, but also lagging where we were at in 2025 and also falling shy of where we were at in 2021 when it was $1,125,000. And while freehold properties have not yet quite come full circle in terms of coming back to pre-pandemic pricing, the condo story is much different. And this may not last for the entire year because we did see a big drop off in condo prices from March to April of 2020 and then a slow bleed of prices the rest of the year. This line may continue to trend up to the spring and then flatten out a bit. But right as of now, February 2026, we've officially closed that gap and come full circle when it comes to the median sale price of a condo in the GTA. Back in February of 2020, it was at $590,000. And as of February 2026, per the Habistat, we are back at $590,000. So last month, we were still about $2,000, $3,000 more year over year from 2020. But again, that gap has completely closed and condo prices are back to where we saw them pre-pandemic. This is the point of the video where I invite you to reach out to me with any questions you might have about specific markets, because while I'm covering everything on the aggregate, different micro markets perform differently across the Greater Toronto Area. The story out here in Whitby is going to be a different experience than people are feeling downtown Toronto or out in Mississauga or up in the Newmarket area. So reach out to me if you want any specific breakdown of a neighborhood or a town that you're interested in learning more about. In terms of our market temperature metrics, we'll run through these really quickly. First, that sale price to list price ratio. For the first time, the GTA wide has seen that sale price to list price ratio come in less than 100 in February, at least this decade. We're down at 98.3%. So on average, People are purchasing homes for about 98% of the list price, at least in February of 2026. And when we look at months of inventory using that 3-month rolling average of sales activity, you can see that in February, we're up at 5.81 months of inventory, so meaning it would take 5.81 months for all inventory to sell out, assuming the rate of sale stayed the same and no new listings were introduced to the market. This puts us in buyer's market territory across the GTA. Looking at just freehold properties, things are a little bit tighter than the market in general. It's down at 4.71 months of inventory. I'd say this is a balanced market leaning more in favor of buyers at this point in time. With condos, the story really hasn't changed too much. We're still seeing months of inventory come in at over 7, firmly in buyer's market territory. If you have a condo listing up there that is even a little bit overpriced at this point in time, you are feeling this, not getting any activity really at all. It would take, again, 7 months for all of our inventory to sell out, assuming rate of sale stayed the same and we didn't introduce any more inventory. So 7.14 months of inventory right now. That is up from our previous peak that we saw last May, when it was at 7.01 months of inventory. To bring this video home, I will bring the stats back home and kind of do a focus on Durham Region where it lines up with the rest of the market. First, looking at that median sale price in Durham Region. Right now, you are looking at, for a freehold property, you're looking at about $845,000 for the median freehold property in Durham Region. When you compare that to Toronto, York, York, it's almost $400,000 less for the median home here. Toronto, it's just over $300,000 less. Same as when you go into Halton, and even when you go out to Peel, you're looking at about $1 million less to live in Durham Region in a freehold property as of February 2026 stats than any other market in the GTA. It also speaks to why it is one of the tighter markets in the GTA right now. And it's months of inventory that will tell us that story. So you can see that Durham Region for freehold properties is still coming in at 3.53 months of inventory. Toronto is the next tightest at 4.32, then Halton at 4.66, Peel at 5.17, and York at 5.73. Not only this, but homes are selling for closer to asking price in Durham Region. You're seeing 100% for that sale price to list price ratio in February 2026, the only market that is up over 100. And days on market is less as well. So the average right now across the GTA is 31 in Durham Region. That is down at 25. So the market is not by any chance smoking hot out here. It just is providing a little bit more opportunity for people looking to get into that freehold property, at least providing more affordable options than elsewhere in the GTA. So will 2026's spring market be different than years past? And I think the answer is yes, it will. It'll be similar in the sense that we should see activity pick up, but it'll be different in the sense that I don't think it's going to pick up quite as much as people are expecting it to. 2024 saw a big run up early in the year. 2025 was a little more muted than 2024, and 2026 is looking to be a little more muted than even 2025. So we're not seeing people rush back out to get into the market. I'm going to keep these numbers updated every single month, at least a couple times a month. So be sure to tune back into the channel to follow along with what is actually happening. But also, if you're trying to paint a picture of where the market's going, it's other things outside of the real estate market that are affecting people's confidence, their decisions to buy or sell real estate. A lot of that comes down to what is going on geopolitically, economically, what is happening with unemployment, what is happening with the markets, what is happening with tariffs, all of these things. So there's a whole kind of world out there happening outside of GTA real estate that is affecting people's decision-making process in the market itself. So those are the numbers that I would be kind of focusing on to, if there's some alleviation, which doesn't look like there's going to be anytime soon based on events we've seen take place this past week, that's what's going to turn consumer confidence around. That's what's going to get the market picking back up. And it's going to take, the market picking back up and sales activity picking back up to actually see where we reach a bottom in prices. So I don't have that as being February or the spring market of 2026. But I also told you that sales are going to pick up this year, and that hasn't happened yet either. So listen to me, don't listen to me. If you have questions about the market or want to talk about your real estate journey in general, go down to the link in the description of this video to book a call directly in my calendar with me. If you have topics for future videos that you would like to see me do, leave those in the comments below as well. I always love hearing from you and hearing what you are seeing out there in the markets as we go through it all together. Thanks so much for sticking with me right through to the end of another video. Until we speak again next time, please stay safe and cheers. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you're interested in watching some more of my content, there's a couple of videos up on screen right now for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.